Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Live with Dr. Mom. This is my moving home series. Whoops. Moving forward series. I'm moving home. Although I am going to be moving soon, but no, moving forward. Moving forward. Welcome, everyone. This is my series on moving forward. I am a doctor of higher education. Entrepreneur, business person. I like to flip houses and real estate. I'm doing a bodybuilding competition. Oh goodness, I am a mother and grandma, good friend. I want to help others. I love empowering women. I love being empowered. So on my series right now, what I'm doing, it's based on 3 principles. Moving forward by creating a strong foundation or having one, a strong foundation, goal setting, and professional development. I've used all these 3 principles my entire life to get to where I'm at now. I'm actually semi-retired from a university. I've been working, oh my goodness, 20 years on my education, my professional development. And I finally reached some pretty steep goals for myself. And so I semi-retired from the university. Now I'm moving forward in my new quest. I'm flipping my house, buying an RV, which I get this week, and hitting the road for a mobile series. That all should happen in about 4 weeks that I hit the road. So I'm getting very excited. I started this whole venture on I was stuck in a place I couldn't seem to move out of. I don't like being stuck. And so I did a Unstoppable Influencer Challenge, and it just took off for me. I did 100 videos in 100 days on Facebook, and it led me to where I am now. As soon as I'm done with my house remodel, I hit the road, get everything set up. I'm going to start a series, 21-day challenge, to help others move forward in their life. So with that, I have moved into principle 1, or you could say professional development. Goal setting, I don't know. It's Women of the Bible. So during the 100-day series that I did with my spiritual connections on Facebook, my good friends and longtime friends, we did a lot of good research and came up with the 3 principles. And so part of that is setting up a spiritual foundation, professional development, things like that. For me, I feel like by getting in touch with women of history, women that have came before us, it helps me. I just really enjoy studying them. It empowers me in some odd way. Maybe I learn from it. I think by studying them, I learn what I should and shouldn't do. This one just happens to be Women of the Bible. Now, I have done a series on 12, I think it was 12 Women of the Bible. I did that on my own, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. This one is 52 Women of the Bible. I have found it to be very interesting, and it also gets you into doing a little spiritual work, a little studying in the Bible, a little get to know. And my higher power is God. For some people, it may be the universe. It may be whatever is your higher power. Mine is God. I'm a Christian. So it helps me. And even if you don't believe in the Bible, to me, it's a historical document. It also, I have found in everything I've ever read, there is nothing that has been a detriment to my education or my professional development. So I like it because I learned so much from it. And you can read it and read it, and never read the same thing twice. Same with my devotional book that I just love. I read it every day because it just helps me move forward each and every day with a positive attitude. So today, okay, so what we've done, what I've noticed in this series that I bought, and it is Jean E. Swisswerda. She's a best-selling author. What I've noticed, it seems to be following the Bible from beginning and end and telling the stories of the women in sequence, which I like because I have been studying it that way anyway. But what I especially like is it's following the lineage of Christ. So the women that were involved in this chain of events that led to the birth of Christ. So I find it incredibly interesting that she followed sort of that path, which I believe that God protected that bloodline. He wanted a pure bloodline, and so you'll notice through different stories in here where he is actually divinely intercepted in different situations. He wanted the people that were going to eventually lead to the birth of Christ to stay within a certain bloodline. So we started with Eve, Adam and Eve. We talked about, what all they went through, kind of, the questions on, what does a serpent look like? Was it just a snake that she just decided, I'm just going to eat this apple? I mean, there's a lot to it that we question, right? And then after Eve, it was Sarah. Sarah and Abraham are the mother and father, basically, of the nation. The whole lineage came from them. Sarah, she was 90 when God revealed to her, I'm going to give you, because she had been barren this whole time. She made the mistake of not believing that God was going to answer prayers. And so Sarah ended up giving her handmaiden to her husband, Abraham. And then all kinds of stuff happened. And we're talking about jealousy today. Same kind of thing. It would be hard for anyone, but long story short, she did eventually give birth to Isaac. And then the next story we talked about was Hagar, which was the handmaiden, and how rough she kind of had it, but then she too was blessed. Okay, so then after, I gotta look. So after Hagar, we talked about, who did we talk about? Oh, goodness. I thought I was going to remember it. Rebecca. Okay, so, then we talked about Lot's wife, how Lot's wife, they never in the Bible is her name actually mentioned, but even Jesus used her as an example of when you're told to do something from God, how you should follow through, because they burned the city, Sodom, and she was told, the whole family, Lot and his $2 a wife, were told not to look back, and she actually did and was turned to a pillar of salt. So then the next story was Rebecca. Let's see. So Rebecca is a story of how Abraham wanted, his son was around 40, which is, I don't know, they lived older then, but he wanted him to have to marry someone within his family line. So Abraham sent his servant to meet Rebecca. And it just kind of goes the story of how Rebecca was chosen from God and everything was divinely inspired. So from there, we're moving into Rachel now. So Rachel, and this is a story of many, I feel like this one in particular is a story of many lessons. especially between the relationship of Rachel and Leah, and even Jacob. I mean, just let's see. So Jacob was the son of Rebecca, I believe. Let's see. I'm pretty sure they had 2 kids, and one of them, I believe. So Rebecca was old. Also, we talked about how Rebecca had twins. The first one born was Esau, I believe, and then Jacob, and how she tricked Isaac into believing Jacob was the actual heir. And so it just kind of, that's another whole story. But so Jacob now, in the end, both of the sons left, and then Rebecca was actually lonely for both of them because of her deception for her husband. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're finding out what's happening with Jacob, and he's moving into where he's getting ready to marry. And this starts the story of his wife, I should say wives, but what happens along that way. So Rachel is who we're talking about today. I believe we talk about Leah tomorrow. Yes. So Rachel's name means awe, and it's EWE and awe, I would assume. This is her character. Manipulated by her father, she had little say over her own life circumstances and relationships. But rather than dealing creatively with difficult situations, she behaved like a perpetual victim, responding to sin with yet more sin, making things worse by competing with her sister and deceiving her father in return. So the key scriptures are Genesis, Jeremiah, and Matthew. I mean, then there again, like oftentimes I relate to these women, and I think, we often think that there's some kind of supernatural, living in some kind of supernatural place where they have all this huge insight, but they were normal people living in a time, well, first of all, where women in general were given in marriage. They didn't have the right, and not just one, several women, often handmaidens, were given to bear children. So they were trying to populate the earth at that time. So it was, they're normal people. I forgot I was supposed to do a quote too. I did do a few quotes. Today I just kind of Googled jealousy quotes, because this is a story about 2 women who were jealous. Well, I mean, they were put in a rough situation, but they seemed to be jealous of each other in different ways. And so this is one of the first quotes. Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. That's Anne Brashares. Here's an anonymous author. Jealousy is a strong emotion that can break any strong relationship. And, we talked about how you should never, let's see, which story was that? I think it might have been with Rebecca, right? How you should never pin one sibling against the other, and never favor one child over the other, because oftentimes what it does is it develops these terrible, I don't know what I want to call it, divides between the family because of jealousy, because they've been stacked against each other, right? Here's another one. Jealousy is a form of hatred built upon insecurity. And jealousy, none of these are all unnamed authors. Jealousy is a disease. Love is a healthy condition. The immature mind often mistakes one for the other, or assumes that the greater the love, the greater the jealousy. In fact, they're almost incompatible. One emotion hardly leaves room for the other. So then again, we were talking about the beasts inside of us, and which one comes to the surface is whichever one you feed the most. So if you feed jealousy, it's going to come to the surface and destroy relationships. If you feed love, that can come to the surface. So I like those quotes. I thought they were pretty good. So back to Rachel and Leah. So now Laban had 2 daughters. So Laban is the father of Rachel and Leah. The name of the older was Leah. So Leah was the older sister, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. So Laban had 2 daughters. The younger one was Rachel. And would normally just from everything I've read, they normally like to have the older one get married first and then the younger one. So Jacob served. So Jacob is living in this other country now. And because he wanted to marry Rachel, he said, I will work for you, this Laban, for 7 years so that he can marry Rachel, the daughter. But they seemed like only, and Jacob really loved her. I mean, she was a beautiful woman and he really wanted her. And so for him, it seemed like only a few days, 7 years, because he loved her so much, because he was in anticipation of being able to marry her. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. So this was for the marriage feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah. So he took the older daughter that the father did and gave her to Jacob, and Jacob lay with her. Which is strange. I don't know. You have to wonder if they were drinking or he didn't recognize. How would he not know which daughter he was sleeping with, right? So because so he basically married off the older daughter, which he had promised the younger one, the father had. But he married the older one to Jacob, and then Jacob did sleep with her. When morning came, there was Leah. So it was dark. He must not have saw her. I don't know. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? Which there was a lot of deception in that. I also feel kind of bad for Leah, the older sister, because she had to have known that Jacob wanted to marry Rachel. That's just like a tough situation. Her dad put them in that situation, right? I mean, I guess if anything, he could have said, well, I can't give you Rachel. You'd have to marry Leah too. But I don't know. I feel like that's a rough situation. So Laban replied, it is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Well, then he should have said something instead of tricking him. Finish this daughter's bridal week. Then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work. So he tricked him. He tricked Jacob into really marrying both daughters and working another 7 years. So that's 14 years. That's a long time. But Jacob loved Rachel, and so he did. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. So Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. See, that's a sad situation. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. I mean, that to me was kind of rough in so many areas. I mean, even having your dad do that to you was kind of wrong in every levels. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So, God saw that Leah was sad and wasn't loved, which, geez, that's not nice at all, is it? That she was put in that situation. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she said to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. So here already, there's this really rough situation where, Leah was the older one. And so the dad tricked Jacob into marrying the older one. And it does say in here that Leah wasn't as beautiful as Rachel. So she kind of probably felt that as well, which is really sad. So there's this big jealousy thing going on between, I would assume, and Rachel felt bad because now she wasn't having children, but Leah was, and Leah had several children with Jacob. So Rachel was at a point where she was, barren and sad, and, basically told Jacob, give me children or I'll die. So then God remembered Rachel at this point. He listened to her and opened her womb. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and named him Joseph. Rachel began to give birth to another child and had great difficulty. As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. So it was Joseph and Benjamin. Rachel was fairly young when she died. It sounds like maybe in childbirth. And that's Genesis 29:16 through 18. So it's kind of a sad story, isn't it? I mean, Kitty, here. Okay, Rachel's life and times. So Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up to your presence. Well, okay, she says, I'm having my period. So Laban searched but could not find the household gods. Rachel's words here are the only mention in scripture of a typical monthly menstrual cycle, other than the ceremonial laws covering menstruation found in Leviticus and referred to again in Ezekiel. I'm not sure why we needed to know that, except that what she's doing here is tricking her father. Because I believe by this time, Jacob had served his 14 years and was going to take his wives and children and leave now. And so we kind of find out a little more about Rachel during this period of time. So she's tricking her father so she can be in the tent alone, I believe. Rachel knew without a doubt that her ploy would successfully detour her father. By claiming to have her period, she not only kept the false gods she had stolen, so while she was alone in the tent, she stole, must have been, I'm assuming false gods were made of some kind of precious, maybe gold or some kind of precious metal that was worth a lot of money. So I believe, if I remember the story, Laban knew that somebody had stolen it, and so she wouldn't let him look for it, and so she stole these metals from her dad, and they were actually gods made out of metals. So she kept her very life, since Jacob had promised to kill whoever had stolen the items from Laban. So Laban, I think Jacob and his family started off down the road. Laban found out that somebody had stolen from him. So he sent his army, or whatever, his men, to go intercede Jacob and the families. And he was going to kill whoever, or he said, you've stolen from me. Jacob says, well, I'm going to kill whoever would have stolen these goods, because nobody that I know of did. So during the time a Hebrew woman had her period, she was considered unclean. This is not surprising considering the untidy nature of a monthly. Oh, geez, I don't know why we have to go into that. Those who touched a woman at this time, even by chance, became unclean until evening. Okay, wherever the women slept or sat also became unclean. Anyone who touched her bedding or her seat was considered unclean until they washed their clothes, bathed, and waited until evening. So she's telling us that because we know by her saying that Laban or whoever's looking for the gods that she stole, weren't going to go into her tent or look, on her bedding and things. A woman was unclean for 7 days and the normal length of women's period. She then customarily bathed to cleanse herself. This is probably the bath that Bathsheba was taking when spotted by King David. Since she had just had her period, David could be sure Bathsheba's child was his when she told him she was pregnant. Okay. The natural flow of a woman's period didn't require sacrifice for her to be cleansed. Merely bathing and waiting a prescribed time was enough. A longer, less natural flow, usually caused by some infection or disease, required a sacrifice in order for a woman to be clean. Neither implied any immoral failing on the part of the woman, but since blood was seen as a source of life, anything surrounding it became an important part of ceremonial law. Okay, many women consider their period and the discomfort and irritability that often come along with it a monthly trial. Something women must bear, and men, lucky creatures, are spared. However, it is only through this particular function of her body that a woman can reproduce and carry a child. Although at times messy, at times nuisance, at times downright painful, only through this process does a woman have the opportunity afforded to no man, the opportunity to bear new life, and in so doing, to be uniquely linked to the creator of all life. Okay, she's just wanting us to understand how incredibly blessed we are to be women, which we do, right? We do understand that. Okay, she didn't really go too much into the jealousy between the two sisters, so I did go ahead and get this other story on it because I thought it was important to really understand what these women were going through. The story of Leah, Rachel, and Jacob is quite a dramatic love triangle. I urge you to read it for yourselves from the Word, but to help you understand where I'm coming from here in this article, this is Mandy Smith. And a man named Jacob begins working for Laban. He notices Laban's younger daughter Rachel and falls in love with her. After Laban asked Jacob what his wages should be, it is noted that Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter." So when those 7 years are over, the father then plays a big switcheroo on Jacob and gives him the older sister, Leah, instead on his wedding night. After figuring out what had happened, Jacob is then married to Rachel a week later, but only after he promises to work another 7 years. That's kind of trickery. There are many lessons we can learn from this story, but to me, it's the emotional undercurrent that I am most fascinated with. The rejection, jealousy, and the desire to be pursued are emotions that are still familiar in this modern day. Let's take a look at 3 of the ways Leah and Rachel's story can teach us about the security we can only find in God. What God considers unfading beauty. Have you ever felt left out, looked over, or rejected? It can be clear that Jacob's negative reaction to waking up with Leah as his bride, not his desired pick, who was Rachel, was taken by Leah as a flashing neon sign of rejection. To be fair, it was Laban that is to blame for this wife swap, but I know as well as you do that Leah felt looked over. I can only imagine. In the Bible, she was first described as having weak eyes. So that's what I read before. So they said weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Genesis 29:17. If the only adjectives used to describe me in a story were that I have weak eyes, well, I wouldn't feel very good about myself. How does this sit with you? Do you still tend to prioritize the qualities we notice about ourselves or others on physical characteristics first? Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. And it seems like more and more, people look at the outside more and more. I mean, you see it everywhere, and we're kind of, from a young kid even, girls are supposed to be skinny and tan and, all those things. And I remember always I've hated the scale for my whole life. Even when I was skinny as a rail, I hated it. Thought I was too fat. And I finally have a good relationship with it at this age. But it's all our society and how women are supposed to be skin and bones and, have a great shape, or how I thought. Maybe that's just the way I interpreted it as. I am grateful for this verse, as it reminds me that what God sees as a greater worth to the kingdom is not the outward beauty, but the heart within. I like to take care of myself, and while I know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I also know that my body and physical strength will fade with time. As we will see in this story, as the story unfolds, the sister with the more outward adornment isn't as strong on the inside as she hoped. So what we do take from this, security only found in our outward appearance, with no internal strength of faith and endurance, will not last the good fight. God makes no mistakes, and although our human eyes will find pleasure in one person more than another, for good reason, marriage, we must not bank on our attractiveness to be all that we stand on. As we will see for Rachel, the security one would expect a person to have that is deemed lovely and beautiful was temporary as her jealousy grew. Jealousy blinds us to God's blessings. Jealousy is an ugly emotion, and sometimes that we all can unfortunately relate to. Jealousy can creep up into any type of situation and does not just affect one type of person more than another. In the case of Leah and Rachel, I think it's safe to say that both of them had to deal with the ugly side of jealousy by feeling it themselves and being on the receiving end. So although Leah didn't have the looks, per se, that Rachel had, she was able to give Jacob many, many children. And so she probably felt jealous of Rachel because Jacob seemed to love Rachel more. And a lot of it was probably her figure and beauty. But then Rachel was jealous of Leah because Leah was able to give Jacob plenty of children. So it just seems like a sad situation. Starting with Leah, we see at the very beginning that she is not only described as a less attractive sister, but also that her father used the fact of her being the oldest and still single sister as reason to take Jacob into marrying her first. I can't put words into her mouth or thoughts into her head, but I think it would be safe to say that Leah may have had some jealousy of the attention that her younger sister received over her. It was noted that Jacob's love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. Because of this, God gave special attention to Leah and enabled her to have 4 sons. So she was blessed with more children. Because of Leah's blessings to bear Jacob children, this in turn created jealousy inside of Rachel. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." God did bless Rachel with conceiving a child, but because she wanted more, as jealousy has its way, she became pregnant again. Unfortunately, Rachel died in childbirth. Did jealousy ultimately kill Rachel? That's between her and God, but it does seem her rage to one up her sister and heirs took her life in an awful downward spiral. We learn from Rachel that if we aren't grateful for the blessings we have and trust that God is enough, jealousy will always make us want more. sadly. So I guess if she wouldn't have wanted another child, she wouldn't have died in childbirth. I guess that's what she's saying. As a woman, we are designed to be pursued. It's by God's design that our hearts race when we are pursued in a romantic relationship by a man that our heart also desires. As we see in Jacob's deep desire for Rachel to be his bride, he worked for Laban not just 7 years, but 14 years, even with a big switcheroo played on him in the middle. I can't imagine how angry he must have been. Well, evidently he wasn't that angry. It seems like he just took it in stride. I'm sure that that made Rachel feel like the queen of the ball, that a man desired her that much. On the opposite side, we can only imagine the deep longing that Leah had to be wanted by Jacob. She bore him multiple children. It was clear that each time she would hope that he would finally want her as he did Rachel. So sad. Again, she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now, at last, my husband will become attached to me, because I have bore him 3 sons." Genesis 29:14. This probably hits pretty close to many of our single hearts. Watching other women being pursued, taken care of, and loved by a man that is the physical manifestation of love here on earth can be hard. I'm not going to lie, it's difficult where I'm at. I had a great long 32 years with my husband, and we had a great, up and down. When you're young and married, boy, you got a lot to go through. So I don't want to ever do that again, but it's hard being in the situation I am. And so I, like Sarah, have to just believe that God is taking care of me in whatever respect. So feeling overlooked or not good enough can be a deep hurt and can snowball into feelings of being less than, forgotten, or the fear of not being wanted just because you haven't been picked yet. I love how God has a special place in his heart for Leah. You see, God enabled Leah to have 4 sons because the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. God saw the rejection that Leah faced and knew what having sons would mean to her. He saw how she was not loved as she deserved to be, and because of her age or lack of suitors, she was married to a man that desired someone else, her own sister. Her security eventually turns from a human to her heavenly Father. He still pursues her heart, even if no one else did. The blessings we see in Leah's life is that her dependence on Jacob's love and attention slowly turns towards God, which is good. We see this when she was naming her 4th child, Judah. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord," instead of feeling bad that her husband didn't love her. She turned her heart towards God, which is a good thing. In this story of Jacob, Leah, and Rachel, we see how God worked through this family to bring about his will for their sons eventually making up the 12 tribes of Israel. What sticks out to me is that things aren't always as they seem. In the case of Leah, she was rejected, dealt with the emotions of jealousy, and deeply desired to be pursued. What she realized was that though her own sister Rachel was wanted and pursued, Rachel herself had her own demons to deal with, including jealousy and anger. A husband didn't fix up. See, that's the thing when I talked about never wanting someone else's life, because you just don't know. You don't know what they've lived through. You don't know how hard it is if you haven't been in that situation. Leah found her security in her Lord, and no one could take that away. And that's where I've turned. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. May we be reminded that God's plan for our lives doesn't always end up with us being the star of a romantic comedy, but the most popular or named being the most popular or named the most beautiful. We won't be promised a pain-free life, but what we are given is so much more. Security in God's love, his pursuit of us, and the desire to use our lives for his glory can be manifested into a love story that is far more special than anything you can see on the silver screen. And on that, we can be secure. So that's a good lesson, isn't it? Super good lesson to turn towards God, not to other people, to make us feel important or loved. Okay, this is one more quote I found. It's Bob Marley, who I really like. Bob Marley. Life is one big road with lots of signs. So when you're riding through the ruts, don't complicate your mind. Flee from hate, mischief, and jealousy. Don't bury your thoughts. Put your vision into reality. Wake up and live. I thought that was super good too. Super, super good. I'm going to look at, see if so this is my Bible that sort of gives you fun facts down below. So this is kind of a historical piece of what the 7 years meant when Jacob said, I will work 7 years for you. It's, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. In the ancient Near East, it was customary for a prospective husband to give the bride's father a substantial gift of money, known as the bride price. Jacob indicates that he is prepared to work for Laban in order to give the equivalent of 7 years' wages. So he must not have had the money. And so what he was basically given was a diary, right? So that he could marry Rachel. So in the evening, it was dark or nearly dark when Leah was introduced to Jacob for the consummation of their marriage. And darkness in a world without artificial lighting can be pitch black. So at this stage, Jacob did not realize that Leah was the bride. So it must have been so dark that he couldn't see her. She may also have came to him wearing a veil, the sign of a betrothed woman. So it wasn't until the morning that Jacob realized who she was. So Jacob's children, so we know that they did make the 9 tribes, right? But so these verses reported the birth of 11 sons and 1 daughter to Jacob. Not surprisingly, given his unexpected marriage to Leah. Jacob's domestic scene is fraught with tension. Laban's deception and manipulation of Jacob creates years of discord between his 2 daughters. So Rachel had 2, and so Leah must have had 9. Okay, so goodness. I guess that's a good lesson for us to know as parents. Absolutely. Well, I don't know. It may be good or bad nowadays that we have the right to make our own choice to get married. I mean, you would sure hope that your dad was thinking the best for you when he gave you over to be married. But in this case, I think he was being I know he was being deceptive. Laban was being deceptive and deceived Jacob and the daughters. It was just not a good situation all the way around. Good. So the 26th, it's the 26th today. This is our devotion today. Welcome problems as perspective lifters. My children tend to sleepwalk through their days until they bump into an obstacle that stymies them. If you encounter a problem with no immediate solution, your response to that situation will take you either up or down. You can lash out at the difficulty, resenting it and feeling sorry for yourself. This will take you down into a pit of self-pity. Alternatively, The problem can be a ladder, enabling you to climb up and see your life from my perspective. Viewed from above, the obstacle that frustrated you is only a light and memorable trouble. Once your perspective has been heightened, you can look away from the problem altogether. Turn toward me and see the light of my presence shining upon you. 2 Corinthians 4:16 and Psalms 89. That kind of went well with our story today, right? I don't know. Like, I don't know if I was put in that situation. I feel like, you know, that the way that it happened, well, Leah already must have known that her sister was, I would assume she had to have known that she wasn't as beautiful as Rachel. So she probably already had that in her mind. And then to have her dad trick her, and then even, you have to wonder if she even knew going into it at night that she was tricking Jacob. Maybe she wanted to. I don't know. I don't think she had the choice, really. It seems like she just had to do, I don't know. That's difficult. It's difficult. But I would assume that, after Rachel did pass away, maybe, it'd be interested to see if she did much better, but I would assume so. So I think that's all I have for today. I hope everyone is having a great Monday. It's cold and rainy here today, which is good because I mowed yesterday. I don't want to have to start watering my lawn yet. It's going to be getting warm. It's only 45 right now. It's going to be almost 80 by Friday. So sunshine's coming out. When it starts getting that warm, we have to start watering. So I'm sort of glad it's been raining the last 2-3 days, which is, I think, good. So that's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed the story of Rachel and Leah. Like I said, if you simply look at this as a life lesson, something to learn from, as parents even, just love your children all the same. Don't be deceptive. That just set up this whole jealousy thing through the sisters, which isn't fair, right? Not fair at all. And to count on God to look to God to be satisfied for your satisfaction, not other people, which is why I do like being single now. It's kind of nice because I do depend on God. So with that, I have a blessed day, and I will be talking to you tomorrow about Leah, this other sister. Her name may mean impatient or wild cow. That's not good, is it? Gosh, that's kind of sad. Anyway, that's what tomorrow will bring. So enjoy the rest of your day, my friends. Much love. Bye.